Hello, everyone, and welcome to Health Tech Edge, where we talk about the latest topics in healthcare technology with industry experts. I'm your host, Zoe Jacobs. Joining us today is our weekly panelist, Raheel Redawala. He's the Chief Strategy Officer at Productive Edge. And our featured guest is Josh Williams. He's the Director of Strategic Initiatives at CEOc. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Zoe.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Josh, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the healthcare space?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of background, I'm really interested in how people get where they're at because that journey is so different for everyone. I'm actually a first-time graduate from my family, the first-generation college student. And after graduating from college, immediately jumped into working with how do we connect students that are graduating from health and medical programs to the jobs that they're most interested in. And so did some career services work there, had a really good opportunity to work at the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce and help lead some of their workforce initiatives. And how do we bring industry together to solve these big problems? And through that, one of the things that I found is that time and time again, that healthcare is one of the most interesting industries in terms of its complexity, but at the same time, also its universal application to anyone and everyone that lives here, right? And so this combination of like passion and complexity and challenge, really paired with this opportunity to really improve in people's lives at scale is something that just made me really interested in this. And the rest is history, as they say.
That's awesome. Can you tell us more about CEOc and the work that you're doing? What are the key problems that you're solving?
Yeah, absolutely. So the CEOc were formerly known as the Louisville Healthcare CEO Council. Just for a little bit of some background on this, we were actually founded in 2017 with a recognition from some former CEOs that, our healthcare system nationally, and I would also argue globally as well, has a lot of systemic challenges that are facing it that are bigger than any one organization in particular. And at the same time, a lot of these organizations, they're in each other's backyards. They're addressing these problems in silos from one another. And really the thesis of our organization then, if you will, was how much farther could we get the ball down the field, so to speak, if we were to come in and address these shared pain points in the collective? And so that really gave birth to what is the CEOc today. Just to put this into perspective, we've got our board is comprised of CEOs from the 15 largest healthcare and aging organizations that are founded or headquartered here in Louisville, Kentucky, and really focused on leveraging that collective of industry leadership to solve these national healthcare challenges, and in doing so, really increase that regional economic vibrancy. But really, what does that mean in terms of challenges then? And one of the things that we're really interested in, and simply put, is that right now our nation's experiencing a drastic aging demographic shift. So much so that by 2032, 2033, it's projected that there's actually going to be more individuals that are above the age of 65. They're actually under the age of 18, which I don't know about you and Raheel. That's kind of a terrifying statistic to me a little bit, in the sense that those are individuals that are simultaneously going to be needing more skilled healthcare across the continuum, while at the same time meaning that we're going to have less and less people are able to provide that care, which creates drastic problems across the nation, across the world.
Josh, you're absolutely right. I mean, from an aging perspective, right? There's so much happening in just recognition that all the players, all the parties that are part of the ecosystem and provide care at the various points throughout the continuum have to really come together to address the type of clinical care and provide services that are holistic. And in order to do so, this idea that I can innovate and understand the challenges in a silo and try to solve them doesn't really just work moving forward. It's how can we come together to solve these challenges and truly actually deliver personalized care that's targeted at this particular audience that you just talked about. So yeah,
exactly. Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit more about some of these, some of the main issues that you're focused on at the CEOc?
Yeah, definitely. When we think about this, and to Rahel's really good point just a minute ago, is that, really when we think about this, it's looking at that systems level approach, right? Because in order to actually drive change and to innovate in a way that matters for everyone, that it can't be done in isolation, it has to be done from that systems perspective. And so really with that in mind, we're really looking at kind of like four different stakeholders that we're engaging with. And on the one hand, We've got the corporate perspective, our council member companies, for example, who are every day thinking about how do we do things better, how do we innovate in this space. And the second side of this, we're also have this huge innovation and entrepreneur network. We've recently acquired a phenomenal organization known as Aging 2.0, which is this chapter network of organizations and entrepreneurs and innovators across the world who are looking to solve these challenges. And from that, we're looking at the individuals who receive this care. To your point earlier, Rahil, about how do we make sure that this is tailored. And so when we start thinking about this specifically from the innovator perspective, we have this mismatch that typically goes on where corporate partners and providers of care and payers of care, they typically have these problems, right, that they're looking to innovate around. And then those aren't always clearly communicated to the innovators and the entrepreneurs who are really developing products and services based off of what they know. So there's kind of this disconnect in terms of what's needed and what's actually out there. And so through our work within the Healthcare Innovation Engine, which we're happy to talk about here in a moment, is really making sure that there's alignment here. So we do discovery work to understand, well, what are these challenges, not just for one organization, but specifically across the continuum of care, thinking about things like social determinants of health and data interoperability, and of course, workforce being one of those. Where do the challenges do those actually look like? And then how do we, through this network of Aging 2.0, identify what are the innovations and technologies that are actually tailored fit to solve these problem statements that we've identified? We bring those folks here, we set them up with paid pilot projects, and then we actually evaluate the effectiveness of those interventions to see, well, are these actually addressing the problems that we've identified? And if so, phenomenal. Let's scale them. Let's make sure that they have what they need. And if not, where can we actually improve these pieces so that we can really create solutions that are tailored to these problems? So that's at a high level here. We're solving kind of three problems in that area. One is access to information around what the challenges actually look like from the healthcare continuum space. The second one is access to customers. And then the third, through these pilot projects. And then the third piece is the evidence base that's facilitated through our centralized data hub that says that these things are actually effective, they're doing work well, and as a result of that, we need to invest in them in order to scale and proliferate these solutions across the nation.
Yeah. So Josh, I mean, what you described as the vision and the execution that CEOc brings in connecting the various dots together is really interesting. But I think one of the underlying things also that CEOc, from what you just said, is addressing is how do actually, parties come together and align on a common vision around a challenge, and then bring the right resources together in order to run a successful pilot that can be measured and then decided, how do we scale that if it's actually making a difference. And for me, what's interesting about the work CEOc is doing there is at a technical level. You mentioned the central data hub. What's interesting about that central data hub for me is, its ability to actually be sort of that, Switzerland of a data estate, if you may, that many organizations that typically wouldn't necessarily share data are coming together around and aligned on a common vision, and contributing the data for those pilot use case, whether it might be, for example, it might be payer, it might be a home care provider, it may be an acute care facility, it may be some a retirement home community, for example, and bringing that together in order to truly understand at a systemic level, as you said, what are the areas that we're actually making a difference and where there are still gaps, and how can interventions like the pilots you just mentioned and the Aging 2.0 network of innovators, how can they plug into that? So having that technical ability to actually do that, in addition to having the vision, is for me sort of that dual role that CEOc plays, and it's really phenomenal to see.
It absolutely is. And Rahil, I don't know, sometimes we talk about these things in the abstract. I'm not sure, Zoe, if maybe an example would be helpful here. But would love to, so for example, if I were to ask you, Zoe, and you, Rahil, what social determinants of health means, even with you two on the call right now, I'd probably get like 9 different answers, right? Like it's a very broad topic. We can't address social determinants of health in that big piece here. And so leveraging exactly what you're talking about, Rahil, which is this healthcare innovation engine, this continuous virtuous cycle of innovation within this work, we identified across our council member companies that a common denominator in every single vertical of care was that this concept of social isolation and loneliness, right, which is, again, not new, that is something that we can actually address. And so armed with understanding that that's a problem statement that came out of this bucket, right, we were then able to work with Aging 2.0, identify an innovator out of France named Familio. If you all haven't heard of them before, I'd absolutely recommend checking out the cool work that they're doing. But simply put, what they do is they convert social media and other images and posts that are similar to that into a format that's more friendly for an aging audience, right? So think about a newspaper. Your posts on Facebook or whatever the cool kids are using these days automatically transitioned into a newspaper that they can read, that they can hold, and that they're really excited about engaging within and being that connection. We brought them here, set them up within a pilot project within 2 of our council member companies. We're asking the question is, does this thing actually address social isolation and loneliness? But we took it a step further beyond that, Rahil, to your point of collecting this disparate data from all these different organizations that are involved within this. We're all able to say, yes, this intervention does address social isolation and loneliness, but it has other additional impacts on this as well. Thinking about things like, times that they've actually had to go and be readmitted into hospitals, as an example. Thinking about what the upstream and the downstream effects of this intervention looks like. Because of this, we're able to get the data that we need to be able to validate and say, yes, this is exactly what we wanted it to do, which, if I can say, was just absolutely cool to be able to be a part of and see that happen.
Yeah, exactly, and same here. It was incredible for me as well to have participated in that. And I think what made it even more interesting was that there is a lot of data that doesn't necessarily come directly from the payers or the providers. It's subjective data that that you gain from having caregivers actually provide care and provide those insights in real time. And also, when you're talking about interventions that may be digitally oriented, you get an understanding of the interactions that the aging population is doing. Are they actually using the experience as you envisioned it to be? Where are they getting stuck? So you're able to optimize that particular digital experience even further. So this data exchange that you're talking about, that data hub that you're talking about from a COC perspective, really doesn't just capture the payer and just the clinical data and the payer data, but also sort of that survey data, the data that the caregivers are seeing, as well as the interaction data with the actual intervention, so we can truly understand the true picture at a systemic level.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and speaking of which, earlier you mentioned solving important issues in the healthcare workforce. Can you expand on that and tell us more about that aspect of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like anyone that's gone through a Taco Bell drive-through right now would probably know that we're facing a workforce crisis, right? And I would say and argue that is uniquely detrimental within the healthcare space, just given the past 3 years that we've been dealing with this global pandemic and the healthcare industry's proximity to that pandemic, right? And so with this in mind, if you can imagine, if we've got 15 CEOs that are working together, they're fierce competitors of talent in this space. And so how do you navigate then bringing these competitors of talent collectively to the table and developing strategies and solutions at the systems level that actually grow the healthcare workforce? And so that's what we've actually done with this, and through this process and working with our council member companies, have created what's known as the Center for Healthcare Workforce Innovation. CHEWI is the acronym. Our branding folks were like, "Hey, we're glad it's not crunchy," right? And which I kind of like that as well. So but the idea behind this is that we have authentic industry leadership at the front end of this. It's really equipped and capable of saying that these are the healthcare jobs that are most important to our organization. These are the skill sets that are needed to fill those roles. And then through those, effectively send signals to all of our education institutions, all of our community-based organizations to say, these are the opportunities that are present in healthcare. Let's build pathways to get people in, and not only into jobs, but into career pathways where they can advance their career, and as a result of that, their economic mobility. And I could talk about this, Zoe, like literally all day long. But it's really the idea here is, again, we are not looking at this from a programmatic perspective, as in, we don't need more programs necessarily, right? We are very program rich here in the Louisville area. But at the same time, we're somewhat systems poor in the sense that those programs are often isolated from one another. And even though they're actually working towards the same objective, they're often competing each other for access of resources. And that's what the CHEWI is actually designed to do, is to orient all those assets that we have, identify where there's gaps within the space, and then actually drive the needle and measure that using the centralized data hub and other tools at our disposal to say, are we moving the needle? And if so, fantastic. And if not, where do we need to improve?
Yeah, I can say that, over the last couple of years, working with various health systems that are going through the challenge, Josh, that you mentioned around workforce. But it's not just the lack of workforce, in the sense that there's a lot of people that have left the healthcare workforce, but there's also the challenge of satisfaction from the role, the stress that it has caused on people and people's lives. But also there's strategic imperatives at a health system, at a healthcare level, around really optimizing the cost of care. All of that has really been a challenge for health systems to really absorb over the last couple of years. And many reports, of course, talk about the impact, the financial impact on health systems, primarily to that. So the work CEOc has undertaken in solving the healthcare workforce challenges is long overdue, even before the pandemic, right? So pandemic is just really accentuating that even further. But very exciting to see that you're tackling it, and it's good. It's great to be part of it, actually. So
yeah. And if I can add one more thing on that too, Zoe, when we think about this workforce, we've typically felt, and P.S., by the way, that this workforce crisis is not by any stretch new. This was going on before I was born, right? So it's been a long time in the making here, absolutely aggravated by the global pandemic. One of the interesting things about this as well, though, is not necessarily just looking at this from a numbers perspective, right? So typically we look at this as we need to build the talent pipeline, and then we need to accelerate skill development to get make sure that we have alignment. Absolutely, those are critical. But when you really take a step back and look at the numbers, if we're going to be talking about that, there are simply not enough people to fill all of the jobs that we currently have. And what that means then is that we need to really get smart about how we're thinking about job design and how we're thinking about the role that technology plays in augmenting that workforce. And to your point around the strategic imperative of retention, Rahil, how do we create a work environment that's conducive to bring in diverse groups of people from various backgrounds and keep them there where they are engaged, where they are satisfied. And as a result of that, they're providing the absolute best care that they possibly can. A good example of this is one of the major reasons that people actually leave work and that they don't come back in. And this isn't just specific to healthcare. It's a lack of flexible scheduling within their workplace, right? And so one of the interventions that we're looking at right now and deploying as a result of this, in addition to all the things that we've talked about, is where is the technology that's actually enables organizations, these very complex organizations, to create flexible scheduling within their own internal units. And so we're really excited to see what that takes, what that looks like and how it shapes. And we'll keep reporting that out as we move forward on it. But we're really excited about it.
Yeah, I can tell you that not just from the CEOc and what you've witnessed as far as scheduling generally as a whole is an area where many health systems are looking at as a potential area for innovation and impact in the short and the long term. So very excited to see that you're tackling that immediately. So good.
Yeah, I mean, we know that this isn't just an issue in healthcare, right? I mean, most recently we've seen this example in the airline industry. They're having struggles with scheduling as well. Are there any other examples of other industries that have taken this model and used it for to solve their own workforce issues?
I mean, at the risk, kind of off the cuff here, Zoe, I think that we can learn a lot from as much of a thorn in the side of like our status quo is, like the gig economy has done a really good job of understanding that work happens when people are available and want to do it. And so I hate to talk about like the Uberization of workforce, but like that's a very real thing. And when we take a look at the lessons that we learned from those, or even quite frankly, the travel nursing agencies, right, which are absolutely decimating the budgets and the financial resources of these organizations. One of the things that they're doing really well is saying, hey, well, we're going to only have you work certain times and we're going to pay you more for that as a result. But and I do believe that when we look at like the Ubers of the world, the travel nurse agencies, which have kind of started figuring some of these pieces out, that there's lessons that we can learn from those. And as a result of that, be more competitive and bring people back to work in healthcare as a result of that.
That's super interesting. So we have time for just one more question. I want to know what excites you most about the healthcare landscape.
Yeah, quite frankly, I'm thinking about like there's a lot that excites me about the healthcare landscape. One of those is that we have a lot of challenges in healthcare that are very unique to healthcare. But I'm very much of the opinion that, for every challenge that there's a solution out there, right? And a lot of people are trying to tackle this problem right now. But nowhere else in the country have I seen is that there is this unique composition of absolute industry leadership working side by side with community organizations, government, and other stakeholders around the shared vision. And so what excites me about that is that there is an opportunity that's growing, that's obtaining gravity, that's obtaining momentum here in Louisville with support from a lot of different organizations, a lot of really smart people that are looking at this and saying, let's all work together to drive the solution instead of us competing over this. And what that's going to translate into, Zoe and Rahil, is not necessarily just really cool solutions that I'm super pumped about just from a personal perspective, but actually translating into better health outcomes for people that's more accessible to everyone, that is lower cost as a result of those things. And that opportunity to drive that impact at that scale is something that absolutely gets me up in the morning, that makes me excited about doing all the things that we're doing. And quite frankly, it's just really cool to be a part of.
Could totally agree with you. That's exactly what drives us here at Productive Edge as well. So very exciting to see all the work that CEOc has taken on, the challenges head on, and excited to be working with you and partnering with you in that as well.
Likewise.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us today, Josh. It was great to have you on. And next time on the show, we'll talk with Amy Burke. She's an advanced practice nurse and director of population health at Microsoft. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Health Tech Edge. Take care.